South Africa's major cinema chains have pulled a documentary about US First Lady Melania Trump just days before its scheduled release. News 24 reported on Wednesday that Filmfinity, the South African distributor, had abruptly dropped the film, citing the current climate. Melania was notably absent from the websites of both Numetro and Ster-Kinekor on Thursday, a day ahead of its international release on January the 30th. The move comes amid escalating tensions between former US President Donald Trump and the South African government following Trump's repeated and widely discredited claims that a genocide is being carried out against the white population. To unpack this, I'm now joined by brand specialist and author Dr. Thebe Ikalafeng. Dr. Ikalafeng, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this morning. Perhaps maybe let's just talk from a branding perspective. How does this decision to withdraw Melania Trump's documentary impact the film's brand reputation as well as its perception?
Well, I mean, the film's brand reputation and perception has got nothing to do with South Africa, because if you look at other countries, whether it's Australia, whether it's the UK, it's been widely reported that from a production perspective, the product itself has not been well received. So that has got nothing to do with the country. It's perhaps the positioning and the branding of that product that may be at issue at this stage.
But why do you think that the film has faced such low turnouts, especially in the US and in the UK? How does this reflect on its own branding and marketing strategies?
Well, Melania, in the biggest scheme of things, Melania is just another documentary. Just happens to be one of the first lady. And irrespective of whether you're a first lady or whether you are just some ordinary lady, the product must still live up to some quality standards that people expect of products of that nature. But perhaps it also reflects how they feel about the subject, or maybe the people responsible for the subjects. I mean, there's multiple people involved in the subject, whether it's Brett Ratner, the producer or the director, who people say was part of the Me Too, one of the people accused in the Me Too era, or whether it is the Melania Trump herself, who says in the movie that she's a proud immigrant. And in the context of a current immigrants issues in the US, the questions may be, so what's so special or different about you as an immigrant? But just broadly, the subject of maybe it's a programming, to me it's a cultural programming issue rather than anything else.
And you speak of it being a culture programming issue. How does this withdrawal, particularly from South Africa and other territories, just reflect on the importance of understanding the local markets that exist and their sensitivities and just the cultural contexts in the markets that you're trying to infiltrate?
South Africa, like many other countries around the world, have got independent institutions which look at a couple of things. One, they look at whether the product itself, the film, does it fit into South Africa's programming requirements. And when it comes to that, I think the authority in South Africa has said that it meets all those. Then the second part it meets is now as a product, and that's going to go into the shelves called cinemas and all those. It must attract interest from the audiences. And the audiences, remember, are not accountable to anybody. They're accountable to their own interests and to their own passions. And the estimations were that South Africans were not enthusiastically running to the movies to watch this. Not because of any political reasons, but perhaps because it doesn't meet their standards of what they would like to see in a documentary of that nature. So in that instance, it speaks to a tasted interest in South Africa. From a political perspective, it also speaks to the fact that South Africa is an independent country, and as an independent country with independent institutions, the government does not interfere in what should be put on in the cinemas and what consumers should be exposed to, and that has been demonstrated here. The authority says, the film production authority said it meets all the requirements. The audience says it doesn't meet my requirements. Government is not involved.
And how do you think we got to a point where there are possibilities of this media sensationalism around the geopolitical issues when we're not looking, like you're saying, at the product itself?
I think from a South Africa, what South Africa should do and do better or do well, as has done in many instances, is not to get involved as from a political perspective, is not to entertain this from a political perspective, and not to comment on this politically, because it is not a political decision. I think we need to separate diplomatic issues from cultural issues. And yes, of course, the message may arrive differently elsewhere in other parts of the universe, where we perhaps are having issues like the United States of America and all those. But it is always important for us as a country and from a government perspective not to entertain this conversation, because now it will be the government interfering with how the cultural product of the country is delivered and how citizens and the choices that citizens make with their money.
And what would you say from a branding perspective would be the key factors that influence public as well as media perceptions, especially when a film is pulled so abruptly?
It does increase the talkability of the film. It does, I guess, in many ways, make people more interested to find out what is it about this film that that did not attract so much interest. People are going to see it. It's going to be bootlegged. It's going to be seen perhaps in other platforms, whether the Netflixes of the world, on other streaming platforms. People are going to get to see it. So the interest levels, while at initial stages, looks like people are not interested in it, and it is not attracting a lot of audiences around the world. I think ultimately people are still going to go seek it to try and understand what is it about those last 20 days leading up to the inauguration. What is it about the content of this product that made it so less attractive? So people will still go watch it, but perhaps it's not going to break records in the right directions, but it will break records in the wrong direction, which it has already.
And still from a branding perspective, I mean, you speak about this possible unintended consequence that because of this, then people might then want to go out and watch this film. Would then that lead to a redirection in terms of distribution, move it out of the cinemas and put it into a streaming online platform perhaps?
Well, Amazon and everybody involved in this has already spent $75 million on this product, 40 million in production and another 35 million in marketing. So they may at some stage, so depending on what the real motives of the production is, if they want to recoup their money, they perhaps will have to look at alternate distribution. And that's why many movies sometimes don't make it, by the way, in the main screens. And many of them make it on the secondary screens, how they land on your phone, on streaming platforms and all those, how they land. So they will sweat the asset to get at least the money back if money was the objective. But if the objective was just to create publicity, increase visibility for the First Lady, perhaps they have achieved that, and she, not that she needed it, they perhaps have achieved that as well. But I think, to me, at the end of the day, the bottom line is this is a cultural issue, it's a cultural positioning issue, and not a political issue. And South Africa as a country should not really get itself involved in interfering with what the two independent stakeholders here, the regulatory authorities, the owners of the distribution platforms, the cinemas, and the third one, actually, the audiences and the choices they want to make with their money and time.
So for filmmakers that are listening to this conversation, how important is just audience perception in determining the success or a failure of a production?
Well, who else was the product aimed at? It has to be aimed at some audience. So it is important for any filmmaker, like the creator of any product, to have a few things correctly. One, there should be clarity about what is the positioning of this product. Second, there should be quality. What type of quality of production do you want? But the most important part is read the room. Understand what everybody else is feeling and thinking. Because chances are the movie, the documentary is probably of a high quality, because Brett Ratner is a very experienced director, if you will. And the production may be very, very good. But then, of course, the challenge with the production is you've got a director and on public record, there's issues about their ethics and all those. Then you've got other people who are involved with the movie who have who asked not to be identified as part of the movie. So all those create a bit of a cloud. So this movie arrived in a very clouded space, which then made everybody a bit wary about the movie as to if it's such an excellent production, why do people not want to be associated with it? So to me, that is the challenge. I think for any filmmaker, for any product maker, for any creator, you must also always ask yourself the question, who's this movie or production or product aimed at? Is it produced to the highest standards? And everybody associated with it, do they add or detract from the product? And ultimately, how we're going to get it out there and what's objective of getting out there? Is it just creating visibility, or is it about making money?
And this then clearly paints a picture of how in tuned and how woke audiences are, especially not just to the product itself, but everybody else that's involved.
Of course, consumers have always been woke, and then in the whole continent and the whole world, South African audiences and consumers are amongst the quote unquote most woke because they are because this is a country where people truly take the constitution seriously, very independent minded, very vocal and expressive, and they make their decisions how and when they see fit, and irrespective of what a government or the government prescribes. And I think that is one thing that we cherish about the Constitution of 1996, the right to say, see, do, and feel what we want without interference from a government or any other third party.
Dr. Ikalafeng, thank you so much for your time. This certainly has been insightful. Thank you for joining us.